Welcome to the Bariatric Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kristen Lloyd, mindset mentor, somatic coach, and transformational guide for those on the path to true healing. Whether you've had weight loss surgery or on GLP-1s or simply seeking a new way forward with food and your body, this space is for you. This podcast is a mission to change the narrative, unlearning the patterns that no longer serve you, moving beyond quick fixes into deep, embodied healing, lasting mindset shifts, and true self-leadership. We are healing from the roots, rewiring the mind, regulating the body, and returning home to ourselves. We are here for growth rooted in honesty and self-trust, because that, my friends, is the foundation of healing. So grab your cup of joe or your stua and let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bariatric Mindset Podcast. I am Dr. Kristen Lloyd, and I am joined by Coach Francis, who works with me and my team in Bariatric Mindset. And I'm so excited that we are here again today to have a conversation about discomfort and growth, because it's going to be juicy. How are you doing?
I'm great. And you're right. It is going to be juicy because we learned so much in growth and discomfort. And I'm so happy to be back with you again today. This has been so fun doing these podcasts and just getting to delve deep into some of these topics, take the top off of it and just blow it up. Let's go.
I think so many people are like, when I get to goal, the skies are going to part, the angels are going to sing, and life is going to be fantastic. And we all know that maintenance is a totally different animal, and this isn't about weight loss or weight maintenance. I think it's, again, more about discomfort equals growth, and something that has come up a lot. But one of the things I'll tell people is, and we even have a worksheet about it, which is that discomfort, right, is where the growth zone is. But discomfort doesn't mean safety or danger. However, one of the things that I've seen in our community is, because of the nervous system dysregulation, people really don't know how to handle discomfort. And I've experienced a lot of discomfort lately. Hello, menopause and perimenopause and anger and tons of different emotions that I would share with people. Just expect the wild range of emotions when life gets lifey. And yet there's this expectation that things are going to be smooth sailing. And that's not the case. And I'm sure we could talk about what to do, how to manage habits and things like that. But I really wanted to focus in on the concept of discomfort, because for some people, it can throw them into not just emotion dysregulation or overwhelm, right? So let's use specific words like overwhelm, chaos, frustration, right? We talk about low frustration tolerance frequently in our work together. And low frustration tolerance is something that a lot of people with depression, anxiety, mental health issues can struggle with. And I would say with the decline of estrogen, and again, this isn't all about menopause or perimenopause, but with the decline in estrogen that women experience in perimenopause, menopause, what we also notice is that's impacting emotion regulation, and the hormones are impacting mood quite a bit, in addition to other things. And again, that's probably for another episode. Yet, what we've got to look at is when we're feeling completely emotionally out of control or having these wild mood swings. At least I know I have, and I've maybe shared, maybe not publicly enough, that I have had some of the most extreme symptoms that I've just, what the hell is going on? What is going on? And I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, oh no, I'm on the shot, or I'm on this, or I'm on that, and I'm chill, or I had a hysterectomy. And it's just, so it makes you feel like an alien. Yet, whether you have the hormonal issues or not, I want to share that they can bring them on. But whether you are going through that or not, you could be 60, way past menopause, and still deal with mood swings, low frustration tolerance, struggling with pushing yourself outside of your own comfort zone, struggling with living in comfort or wanting comfort, and being in comfort isn't where we grow. And so we do need the emotional bandwidth, the nervous system mental, emotional. We need the capacity to be able to deal with that. And so I'm open. I'm happy to share, the chaos that is what I've experienced. And I'm skilled. And I still have felt like, what in the heck is going on? And so I also have a lot of empathy for folks who may not have that skill set and are struggling with emotion dysregulation, but with wild emotions, anger, frustration, disappointment. We could go on and on. You've got to be able to handle the discomfort of that. And one of the things that I see specifically with the bariatric patients that we work with is that they don't have that emotion skill set. And I want to just say it's not about fault. It's that we're from a generation that was, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. A lot of emotionally immature parents, grandparents. And so we wasn't emotional regulation and emotional expression wasn't fostered. So we're dealing with people who are struggling with, how do I deal with anger? How do I even allow myself to touch it or express it? Like, some people don't even know what they're feeling or are afraid of touching discomfort. And it's largely because of the conditioning, the programming, childhood into adulthood. And that's what we want to talk about a little bit, is how do we handle discomfort when discomfort is where the growth is? And if we've been using food to soothe, we're not going to necessarily talk about how not to use food to soothe, because before we can even get to that, we got to talk about your relationship with discomfort.
Absolutely. And I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said low frustration tolerance. So many of us are raised in, even if you weren't raised in trauma, you were certainly raised in environments where you were around people. Most of us didn't come here with a clean slate, right? We didn't just come here and around with this disordered eating, but we didn't come here innocent. We came here with a lot of that familial baggage or baggage that we brought along with us, whether it was from our family of origin or dysfunctional relationships, where we did not learn how to regulate ourselves using interception, like looking into ourselves and deciding what it is that's going on. So therefore we're constantly avoiding discomfort. How do you avoid discomfort? You numb. And in this context, we're looking at avoiding discomfort by utilizing food, or we're avoiding uncomfortable conversations because we don't value our opinions enough. So it's really this ability to expand our capacity to understand and to look at, the situation for what it is, step back from it, look at it for what it is, and then make the plan. I love a great plan. I love, how am I going to get out of the discomfort? I'm going to sit in it and I'm going to breathe through it, and I'm going to allow it to make me get motivated to do something differently. And that's where the growth happens. But I think a lot of us come to this part of our journey with never having sat in the discomfort. And that is what the surgery for a lot of people does. And that's what makes it successful or not successful. Those that choose to work through the discomfort and work on their inner voices, the negative self-talk, the poor habits, like you mentioned earlier, and then being able to then go outside and say, okay, I'm willing to work through some of this discomfort. What does it look like? What is it? And you said anger. Anger is a huge emotion that so many of us are really afraid of. We are afraid that if we get angry, terrible things are going to happen. And a lot of that can come from past trauma, right? When we saw other people angry, what happened? Maybe we got hurt, either physically or verbally or emotionally, we got hurt. Anger can be utilized as a positive thing. It goes inside and says, hey, there's something off here. What's off? Let's be curious about why you're angry. And I think that you and I spoke before this call. And so I know some of the stuff that you were recently going through. So you explained something where you needed that anger to flow through you so you could get on the other side. So please share that with us. I want you to share that a little bit with us.
So
you out, Kristen. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. So you guys, I'll link the post to my Substack where I talk about this. And there's a little post anger video that I had done. It was so it was the 4th of July, and I was vibrating from within, not in a good way. It was just, there was so much tension, anxiety, anger, and it wasn't at any one thing. It was just all of these things bubbling to the surface. And yes, I was on my monthly cycle. Yes, I felt felt like I had a version of PMDD, like premenopausal dysphoric disorder, which can go into the first days of your cycle. And just the mood swings of being in perimenopause, there was just so much anger. And I had done some somatic work. I had gotten in my body. I laid on the ground. I tried to get quiet. I tried to shift my thoughts. I tried to journal, and I was just, it just kept bubbling. So I remember telling my husband very calmly, I go, if my workout clothes on, I said, I'm going downstairs because we have a gym in our basement. And I said, I'm going downstairs and I'm going to move through whatever this is. And I need you to know that I'm probably going to scream and yell, and I have to let some things out, and it might be uncomfortable. Is it about you? Is it about? And he was like, oh, okay. And he just didn't think anything about it. So I go downstairs and we have a punching bag and some different things. And I put my AirPods on and just put on some music that was really allowed me to express the rage. And I was screaming and yelling, and our house is older and it's not very insulated in terms of sound and things like that. So it was probably about 20 minutes in that he came downstairs and he was like, you're scaring us. I'm afraid the neighbors are going to call the police. And I'm like, I don't think the neighbors can hear me. And he was like, he literally said, and this is also something I want to share because I think our partners and our family mean, where he was like, is there another way you can do this? Where it isn't, he wasn't doing anything. Like it isn't so disruptive. It doesn't sound so awful. And I was like, I literally looked at him and I said, no, there's not. And I was still in it. And so I was very honest that I said, again, this isn't about you. Go back upstairs. I'll be done. Let me just do this. And he did. And then it's been a joke since then that I went down and was screaming and yelling, and I felt like I had a full-on breakdown. And you know what, though? I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't yell at anyone. I didn't blame anyone for my feelings. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't like I know somebody who does this kind of thing, because I don't. And I'm like, what I'm saying is I didn't hit anybody. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't displace my anger. And I took full flipping responsibility that whatever was showing up in my body, even I may have been mad about life circumstances, life situation, my hormones, I was frustrated. I took responsibility in that moment and found a way that I thought was the healthiest way to shift. And the other thing that could be a barrier for some people is I also had to not give a crap, cuss word, about what they thought. Because if they thought I was crazy, so what? That's part of the thing. And I was talking to somebody the other day, little off topic, but this is a great segue, is I said, do you know, again, not to make this about menopause, but I said, do you know that hysteria, Freud, back in the day, I'm not a fan of Freud necessarily, but Freud, like the women that he treated were quote unquote hysterical. Like he coined the term hysteria. They were all in their 40s and 50s. And then whoever I was talking to goes, that makes sense. Or I said, hysteria comes from the Greek root of the word for uterus. And she was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Hysterectomy. Hysterectomy is the removal of your uterus. Hysteria is what they call hysterical, is where you can't control your emotions, or hysteria is referring to women's inability to maintain their emotional state. So there's also another layer here of social programming that we are to quiet or demure. Don't be a bitch. Don't speak your truth. Don't go against the grain. Just stay quiet. Don't feel this. Don't feel that. On top of don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. So I think a lot of times women are programmed and conditioned to not feel. And then when we do feel, it's too much for men, but also for society, because we are a very patriarchal culture. We do have a very patriarchal society. And for people to say, oh, she was crying, or she had these emotions, and then it becomes, oh, it's not professional, or then it becomes, it's not this. Now, again, I'm off the beaten path, but like when we look at that, I was able to hold space for my emotions, for what I was going through, work it through my body. And one of the things I said in the Substack and in my little video video is my rage was sacred because it was something when it was bubbling, it didn't feel sacred. But the fact that I was able to move it through my body and not hold it there in silence, like the process of the release. And I'm just going to say, you don't have to do it how I do it. Some people run. I'm not a runner. My knees aren't going to take it. So there was a way that I moved it through my body that worked for me. Screaming, yelling, that may feel like very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. So again, and I had said this to you earlier, my husband was like, I've never heard you yell like that. And I'm like, I've never been perimenopausal before. I've never heard you play music like that. Because it was like a lot of, and I was like, I've never been perimenopausal before. You're going to see things and experience things. I've never been here before. And it can be scary. And so back to the whole topic of discomfort, I was allowed to move through that because I held space for myself, but also, and I'm going to use the word defend, not because it was an attack, but I also felt like I had to defend going upstairs and yelling because it was so unusual for who I am. And it was so unusual. And I can see women that I think of that may be listening to this that might be like, yeah, that would be unusual for me too. That's not who I am. That's not who I am on a day-to-day basis. And when you have so much buildup of an emotional, whatever you want to call it, overwhelm or whatever, that's stuck in your body, you have choices. But a lot of times when we discount things like, oh, I can't do that, people will think I'm crazy. I can't do that. That would disrupt my family. That would make them uncomfortable. I made them uncomfortable. I made them uncomfortable. But if I didn't make them uncomfortable, I would have stayed much more uncomfortable. So now we're going into, when we talk about growth and discomfort is growth, it's not just my discomfort, is that for me to heal, for me to get all that crap out of my body, because what we know, if anybody's ever read When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, he talks about trauma, stuck trauma in the body. He talks about a link between people pleasing for women and breast cancer. I read page 65 to people all the time. So it's such a great book, and it's such an enlightening read, because the more that we're pleasing because we want to keep the peace, sometimes it's at our own expense. It's at our own expense. So growth is about our willingness to be uncomfortable, but also our willingness to make other people who it's not even about them. But in order for us to like release or be who we are, a totally different example is I've worked with people that have said, my family won't eat that. If I'm going to live different, it's so much easier for me to just fall into what my family eats because they won't eat that. You're afraid to make them uncomfortable and you're willing to suffer the consequences. My family won't eat that either. Like my husband's a vegetarian. Like we find ways to make it work. It's like you either find a way to make it work or then in air quotes, you suffer the consequences. Then you are like, I guess I won't. That's not noble. My health is just as important as his health, but me screaming for 30 minutes isn't gonna, if that bothers you, that's unfortunate. And I'll let you deal with your discomfort. So I think the other note here is sometimes we're taking on the energy of other people's discomfort. And I know I've done that. I did that for years. And it's like, I took it on as my own. And so now I'm like, hey, in my example, hey, if that makes you uncomfortable, that's too bad. Go upstairs. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. It's not about not caring about him or them. It's about understanding that I have to do this for me. The fact that you don't like it is about you. That's not about me. If you're uncomfortable, that's something you need to work through. And if you want to talk about it later, when I'm of rational, sound mind and body, we can do that. But right now, it will escalate and we'll get into a situation because I'm not done processing this. And for you to say, and I didn't even have to go there with him because he was like, okay. And he turned around and went upstairs. But I think for other people that may say, oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. Or I would have to go here. I would have to go there. Or people would be concerned. Yeah, they were concerned about about me. They were like, Mom had a breakdown in the basement. And I'm like, yes, I did. And I own it because you know what? I feel so much better. So when we take ownership of what's ours and not, I think that's the bonus lesson here, is that other people's stuff isn't ours, but sometimes we take it on and it also stops us or limits us or inhibits us from doing what we need to do for ourselves because we're focused on other people's discomfort of how are they going to respond to my needs.
And I think as a society, thank you for sharing that story. And really what comes to my mind is as a society, we are truly told not to have those big feelings. Women are, and men too, men are told not to cry. So they're not, so that is and when women cry, it makes men very uncomfortable, typically. Now, I'm using typical,
but it's true. It's true. And I've trained my family. I need to cry. I need to emote. Please don't tell me to stop crying. I will stop crying when the emotions stop flowing. I have trained them to be like, okay, she's going through something. And they do also, which is lovely. They're like, how can I support you? How can I support you? But it's come from training. Like I had a conversation with my husband and I was upset about something. And he said, it was so funny because I'm like, I could hear in the back of my mind, I've trained him. He was like, your feelings are valid. And I just want to validate what you're saying and what you're feeling and that you're allowed to have those feelings. And I was like, yay, Kristen, you've trained him. And it's because he's heard me say it so many times that what does she need? I could see his eyes like flicking back and forth. And he was like, okay, this is what I need to say because if I say anything else, but I think that's sometimes what we need to hear is we just need to be validated that I don't know what you're going through. It doesn't make sense to me. And you're allowed to have your feelings, like essentially is what he said. And I was like, yeah.
And I think that we need to continue to teach those folks around us that, but we also, I think in my mind is truly being mindful of when we have our emotions, not putting ourselves in environments where we're going to get shamed or blamed. There are people that I would not act like that around because I know that they would shame me and put me into a box of hysterical, crazy, et cetera, et cetera. So you, because of the work that you do and where you are in life, you have that great safe space kicking into, okay, so how can we find that for the everyday girl or the everyday woman or man and finding those safe spaces? And I think that actually piggybacks on to, okay, it may not be feasible for you to go in your basement and do that. But what is feasible? Here we have the problem of that pent up emotion, whether it be anger, rage, sadness,
grief. Oh gosh, grief. Like I see a lot of women who have grief. So the thing that I would say is how do you hold space for whatever that emotion is? And some people may say, because that's the typical thing or think, I don't want to hold space with it. I just want it to go away.
Yep.
And I want to how do I get rid of it? It's like hot potato. Right. So the thing is,
you get rid of it by going through it. Because if you don't go through it, you will stuff it and it will come out sideways. And when things come out sideways, they unintentionally either hurt us or hurt other people. And if I've learned anything through this process, that is the biggest thing I've learned is that what I kept inside was not really kept inside. It came out sideways.
And that's the other thing that I thought of is if I had left it, to fester. And this I want to share because I think this could be huge for other people because we work on communication, but this isn't something I've necessarily talked about publicly, is that our communication styles are also driven by our emotional states. And sometimes when we're holding on to anger and resentment and frustration, even if they have nothing to do with whoever we're communicating with. But if you're in an office, and I'm just going to make up a story, if you're in an office and you're frustrated by management or you could even be frustrated by your husband, your spouse, you're frustrated with life. So maybe it doesn't even have to do with work. And somebody comes up to you and you're in a mood and they're like, oh, you have to fix this. This was wrong or this needs to be. And you're like somebody who could get very passive aggressive in their communication style or aggressive. And I haven't been in a typical workplace in been like over, I don't know, 20 years. But one of the things that I do know is that, and I'm not an organizational or what do you call it? I'm not an industrial organizational psychologist. But what I do know is that I would bet money that a lot of the arguments and frustrations that happen in the workplace, and I know I'm going off tangent, but are really about how we handle emotions or don't, communication skills and styles. Like, are you passive aggressive or aggressive in how you communicate? And early childhood attachment issues, which have a lot to do with authority and power and control cycles. And so I've always found it interesting when I have clients who are like, oh, this is going on with work and these people are doing this and these people are doing that. And I'm frustrated. And it has a lot to do with not those individuals at work per se, but what's going all the different areas of your life that is illustrating cycles of power and control and how we communicate. So I can see someone at work where somebody's, oh, you have to do this. I'll get to it when I can. This passive aggressive or aggressive communication style. And that person may have just been like, okay, I didn't do anything. I'm just a messenger. But when we think of, I could have said something, I could have held on to all of my feelings and been resentful of making dinner, resentful that I had to empty the dishwasher, angry, just about everything. I could have held that and it could have come out in a lot of different ways that would have impacted my relationship because it could have started a fight where then my husband wouldn't have even known. He would have known that I was frustrated. He wouldn't have understood, okay, now do I have to handle her with kid gloves? Or where people escalate is whatever tension and frustration and anxiety, anger, whatever is showing up for them. When you don't process that, it shows up in other ways because it could be, oh, hey, what's for dinner? Oh, what's for dinner? Thanks for asking. Maybe you should make dinner every once in a while. And he could be like, and this didn't happen. I'm making this up, but I can imagine he'd be like, or anybody, any couple, the spouse is like, what did I just walk into? And it can feel almost like an attack. And it has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with dinner. It has to do with all of these things, but it has to do with the stuck emotion that honestly could be hormonal. It may not have to do with a bad day at work, but it could. It could do with their relationship, but it doesn't.
A phone call. Yeah,
a phone call
you had with your mother or your sister, and I think that the part of the conversation too is that anything can trigger this, right? Triggering this frustration can happen in all walks of life. Shoot, walking down to the mailbox and stubbing your toe, right? And just being irritated so you can walk into life walk into any scenario being frustrated. So one of the things that I pulled up was real quickly the definition of frustration so that people have an understanding of what we're talking about here. So it's the feeling one has when reality does not immediately conform to one's desires. That sentence right there, the feeling one has when reality does not immediately conform to one's desires. That is huge. So think about that and that's daily basis, right? We always
daily basis. Like we were coming home from a soccer game and it took 2 hours. I wasn't frustrated Saturday because I'd already let it on Friday, but also I didn't have any place to go other than home. So if I had and it was a Saturday, but if I was like, oh, I have to do this, there might have been some frustration that welled up, but there wasn't. I'm just giving that as an example, but traffic is one that can frustrate people on a daily basis because it does change. It does fluctuate. There can be accidents. There can be road work, and it doesn't matter where you live. The traffic is traffic. And that can be something that is also outside of our control. And I think I see, and I don't want to make a generalized assumption, but I would say that most of the people, somewhere between 75 to 85% of the people that you and I work with, are trying to control things outside of their control. And they're frustrated by things outside of their control. And usually I'm like, who's a control freak here? But control is really about, I think, the trauma response, because once we've had some form, little t, big T, complex trauma, it's the nervous system's way of protecting itself to say, oh, I need to control things, because if I'm in control, then I won't be hurt or injured or blah, 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 whatever it is again. And the truth is, you and I both know, we know that we can't control everything. So it creates an anxiety disorder a lot of times. And I'm not saying everyone has an anxiety disorder, but pay attention to what are you trying to control? I can't control my family. I can't control other people's thoughts. I can't control external situations. And when I feel I cannot control my emotions because they're sitting there like a lead brick, what I can control is how I move them through my body. What I can control is how I deal with them, how I allow them to flow. And to your point, it's, what did you say a little while ago? You said something about, you'd said something like, we move through it. You don't just, it's not stuffing it. You have to move through it. So I had a choice, and we all have a choice. And sometimes we don't like the choices, and there's still choices.
And I think that too, there's nothing wrong with frustration. Okay. Frustration is like with any emotion. There's nothing inherently wrong with any emotion. Frustration is just one of them. It's when we have the tolerance for it becomes so low that we don't know how to activate our growth response. We're in a place of, we're just beat down, exhausted, and not one more thing can come onto our plate without an overreaction to the situation. Because that's typically what happens is when we get super frustrated and we have a low frustration tolerance, we overreact to a situation where we just really needed to respond to the situation using a big girl thought process, not a 3-year-old thought process. Traffic is a perfect example. You and I live in a big city. Traffic is terrible. And if we're coming from a place of, okay, I'm frustrated at the traffic, like you said, you were frustrated at it, but you used your adult thinking around how to process that. I live in a big city. You know what? We left 2.5 hours early because we knew it might take us 2 hours to get there. Or we didn't leave early enough. Next time, ding, ding, I'll think about that. But I'm using my adult brain to think that through. When you have a low frustration tolerance, you start flipping people off. You start zigging in and out of traffic. You start taking back roads that then just piss you off more, blah, 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 blah. And I only speak from experience. We live in that city where at times that happens. So frustration can really lead us to growth if we're willing to look at it and look at it. Stop, look at the situation, and adjust your thinking to the situation. And then we can work through the bigger problem. One of the things that you said earlier was having this breakdown. I have had the absolute pleasure of raising 3 wonderful children. They're all adults now, 2 of them boys and one of them a girl who's 21. And I remember when she was, and she still does, but going through really tough times, and she would have these breakdowns.
Was it puberty related or just?
It was very much puberty related, but I don't want to put everything into the hormone box. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I can, and we can, but you know what? I have breakdowns, and I'm not going to relate them to hormones. I'm going to relate them to life. Life is hard. Yeah. The emotions may be bigger at times when I am fluctuating hormonally, but I don't know that, since I can't do a litmus test every day to find out where my hormones are. You know what? Today, maybe you just pissed me off more than normal. And one of the things is, and it made her older brothers and my husband specifically very uncomfortable to watch her have these breakdowns. Yeah. Because the boys' breakdowns looked differently. They were more go out and hit the ball a bunch of times or go out and play basketball, whereas hers were literally sitting on the kitchen floor crying. And we would walk over her and around her. And I would just say, and I said this early on, and I said, just remember, with every breakdown is a breakthrough. Yeah. You will come out of this on the other side, I promise you. And of course, she's in the middle of it. This is terrible, blah, 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 whatever the reasons are. And so there was that safe space that I held for her while she was going through that, and which I have learned to hold for myself now. Not to say that my husband couldn't hold space for me now, but it just looks different because he wants to fix it. Anytime you're, and lucky for you, Kristen, that you were in that environment where your husband's, he kind of really gets it. Most people aren't in those situations. Most people, when you start crying or start having a meltdown, those around you want to fix it. They just do it.
My husband wants to fix it a lot of times, and I have to tell him I need to express or I need to be heard. And I've had to get better at my communication. Sure. Because I can remember I had it was a couple years ago, and I was frustrated with something, And I remember saying to him, I need to like emote. I need to like yell. I want you to hear me and I want you to like just hear me. And I wasn't yelling at him.
Sure.
Because it wasn't about him. I said, I just want you to hear me and just allow me to express myself. It was totally different. It was nothing like what I went through last week, but I was like, I just want to, and I remember he sat there in bed and like just looked at me, his eyes got really big. And he was like, what was so hard for him was not giving me advice. I could see it in his face. He was like, okay, I hear you. Like it was so hard for him. And I think that's hard for a lot of men to just listen without offering, okay, what are you going to do? Or how are you going to fix it? Or how it was just like, okay. And then there was times where he was like, do you want me to say anything else? Do you want anything? And I was like, no, I just want to feel heard. And he was like, okay.
It's hard for people, male, female, husbands, wives, sisters, brothers, mothers. It is hard to sit there and watch someone have a big emotion. It just is. And this is one of the reasons why I think, have this obesity epidemic that we are living in, is because we were, as young children, most of us were told not to have these emotions. So what did we do? We're the ones that moved to food, and some moved to alcohol, some moved to drugs, some moved to type A personalities, work hard, workaholics, over exercising, all of these, whatever the over is, over something. We
see transfer addiction after surgery and things like that too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And boy, that's a whole nother call, because that is really, and that's tapping into, that's where the work really needs to be done. We were told or learned not to have these emotions. They weren't appropriate. And we were never given an opportunity or a space where they were appropriate. And I think that there's a shift in parenting these days that is shifting and changing. I think I'm seeing more and more parents move their children into the environment of, hey, let's have these emotions. Let's just have them appropriately in an appropriate space where everybody feels safe and not unsafe. And so I think that it is shifting, but we're okay. But are you still in survival mode? They still have so many people that come out of from childhood trauma that are just surviving. So when we look at all the ingredients, this is the recipe that, and this is the end result of what we get. And what we get is not being able to manage these big emotions. And how do you move from these big emotions into healthier living?
So there's something that I want to tack onto that, because when you were talking, it got me thinking about, again, something that I'd said a little while ago is not just I'm not allowed to have these emotions, but when I know, and not just me, but I'm saying like me, and I'm using the collective. If I know, or if we know that our emotions are going to make other people uncomfortable, secondary piece. So if I know, okay, I'm going to work through these emotions and I'm making you uncomfortable, it's now making me uncomfortable to have the emotions. Yes. I'm trying to hold your discomfort of my emotions while also holding, it's like juggling, or it's like holding, if you have too many grocery bags that you're trying in the house, it's like I'm trying to hold your discomfort around my emotions and my emotions, which are already uncomfortable. So I've got a double whammy. And I think that's what society and the conditioning and the programming for many people, and even the folks who go, I don't care. I'm like, that is such a facade, because I know those people are like so soft and squishy on the outside. It's such a defense mechanism. It's like,
absolutely, unless they're psychopaths. And we're joking about that, but I know that's where the real growth. So you're right. There's a double edge, right? Your discomfort over their discomfort over your emotion. And unfortunately, when we do that, right, so let's even take that a step further. So when we're uncomfortable about someone else being uncomfortable about our uncomfortable emotions, and we're not letting them have their discomfort, we are robbing them of the ability to grow as well. So we're stripping their growth from them by trying to control the situation. Really,
it's
control. So I was told years ago, the only thing I can control is what is inside my hula hoop. Okay. So if I think of my body and I put a hula hoop around me, depending on how big my hula hoop is, right? But the average size hula hoop, whatever fits inside that hula hoop is my problem. That is my problem. Everything outside of that hula hoop is some problem. Yeah. And I love visuals. They really work well for me. And so I have to continue to remind myself, Is it inside my hula hoop? And if it's not, am I willing to jump outside my hula hoop and dig into someone else's life and try to fix somebody else? And I know from personal experience, trying to fix other people doesn't do anything but harm myself.
And that's not my responsibility. And even caring, I can care about someone else and I can hold space for them. And I am not responsible for their choices. They're not responsible for my choices. And I learned a long time ago. I remember I was in grad school. So I wasn't even coaching at the time. It was therapy. And I remember there was a girl in one of my classes and she was asking one of our professors, she said, it was so profound. She said, how do we not take responsibility for our clients' outcomes?
Wow.
And I was
that's
like,
a great one.
I remember if I was sitting back in my chair, I like sat up and leaned forward. I was like, I want to hear the answer to this. And the thing that he said was, if you take responsibility for their success, you also need to take responsibility for where they don't follow through, because none of it is yours. So one of the things that is most important is that you are there, you are detached. You are there to help. You are there to support. You are there to offer new insight. You're there to see the things that they can't see. You are absolutely not there to take responsibility for their outcomes. And I've had people that I work with now say, how do you not get frustrated at me or angry because I didn't follow through on this? And I'm like, because that's your learning process. Absolutely. And I am not here to judge you. I'm here to help you to grow, to learn better so that it's like a kid riding a bike. If you have a parent or learning to walk, and I use this example frequently with bariatric patients, if you have a toddler that's learning to walk and you're like, idiot, you can't do it. That's sometimes what I think a lot of folks are doing to themselves. Or if you have a parent and you need to do it without training wheels, what the heck is wrong with you? You fell down again? Are you stupid? Who says that to a child? Yet that's the self-talk that we have in our heads, that we harshly judge ourselves. And we need that learning curve. We need that scaffolding. We need training wheels sometimes. We need the support mechanisms in order to learn so that, oh, I did it with training wheels. Now I got really good at it. And now I can do it without training wheels, but I still may fall without training wheels because I don't have the practice. I think the same thing is with the emotions, trying to take on Goliath type emotions with no skills. Like I would be scared for folks because it's not, okay, I'm going to feel my feelings today. We're still going to have that protective nervous system response. We're going to still have that protective, no, this feels unsafe. Because if we haven't allowed ourselves, this is where discomfort comes in, because we grow in terms of, again, capacity, what we can hold space for ourselves, but it's also, sometimes we jump too far. It's like some people, another example that's like a visual is if somebody walks into a gym and they try to lift a 50-pound weight, it's no, you need to start with 5. So when we're experiencing emotions, it's let's name them, but not name them from the feeling, but name them in terms of, okay, what does fear look like in my body? And one of the things that I'll happily share here, that's a nugget that we utilized in a group call a couple seasons ago in my coaching program, was a woman who was like, I don't even know how to feel this. I don't even know what they look like. I don't even know how they show up in my body. And one of the things that I suggested to her, and this is just awesome, and I'm just going to say, everybody do this. If you feel like you don't have the language for emotions, I want you to go and watch the movie Love Actually. I want you to watch the movie, and I want you to look at the different scenes, get a pen and paper, and I want you to look for grief. I want you to look for sadness. I want you to look for anger. I want you to look for frustration. I want you to look for joy. I want you to look for disappointment. I don't want you to look for excited. I want you to look for anxious. Like we can, now I'm naming things that aren't just the 7 or 8 typical emotions, but when we start to look for those things and we can see how the characters, it may take 2 or 3 times watching it, right? But this is a brilliant activity or exercise that's external, because when I start saying, okay, Francis, I want you to name when anxiety or tension shows up. If you have a good relationship with your body, or you've never done it before, or if you're a perfectionist and you're like, oh, it's too much. If I externalize it and I say, okay, here's an external viewpoint. I want you to point out these things out there and to see them out there. Number one, it's much less threatening because you're not dealing with your own stuff. 2, you're like, oh yeah, last week when I was at the grocery store and I had to get through the line and da-da. Then you can reflect and bring it back and name it. But if I have you jump in right now and it's like the spotlight is on you, it's hot in here. Did anybody notice the temperature's changing? You don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to deal with it because it feels too intense. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It really does. And it reminds me that I know that this is a broad audience here that this is potentially getting out to. So I think that's a great little nugget of people who don't understand their emotions at all. You and I come to this table, and you come with lots of different trainings around it. And so you really get emotions and I have a lot of personal insight. And so I understand my emotions. But if you're coming to us and you're a month out of bariatric surgery and you're just so overwhelmed with all of this rush of emotions, that's a great exercise for people to do. So they may be uncomfortable. They may be living in discomfort, and you may not have a clue on what's making you uncomfortable. So being able to name the emotions, and you guys can do a quick Google search and finding like 10 basic emotions and start there as well. Just name, okay, what does it feel like when I feel love? Where is that in my body? Where do I feel anxiety? Is it in my gut, or is it in my groin? Is it in my head? Really being able to name that, because when you can name where the discomfort is and name the emotion that comes around the discomfort, then you can move into, okay, how can I grow from it? And be okay with being uncomfortable for a minute. This process, this post-bariatric lifestyle process, it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and you're not going to all of a sudden wake up a month, 2 months, 6 months after surgery and be, it is going to take years of reprogramming your brain to respond to this new lifestyle that you have created. And if you are multiple years after surgery and finding yourself with regain or never met a goal, or really still struggling in those places, this is a great place to start. This is a great place to start. I know that we don't want to go too much longer, so I'm going to give my final thought and just say that we grow in the discomfort. That is truly where we grow. That is number one. When I'm uncomfortable, there's a lesson to be learned, and I need to take my behind out of the kitchen and put it in front of a place where I'm going to learn, whether it's journaling, sitting in quiet time, meditating, picking up the phone and talking to somebody, because community is where I grow so much. That's where I'm going to grow. So that's my final thoughts on that.
I want to share something that came a couple different things. One, it was from way earlier in our talk that had to do with when you were talking about our adult self versus our like toddler self and where we are in reacting versus responding. And one of the things that I wanted to add there were so many other juicy things, was the meaning that we create as a result of our emotions, the meaning making. This means this means I am not holding it together. I can't handle it. I'm not good enough. I suck at this, whatever. The meaning that we create sometimes becomes our truth, but our inner self-talk drives the meaning-making machine. I'm going to say that again. Your internal dialogue, your internal self-talk drives the meaning making machine. So the meaning making is how we are responding. And I will also say that I had an adult enough connection to myself on Friday to say, this is what you need. And my toddler self was like, get it off, make it go away. And so sometimes when we're in that toddler space, it has a lot to do with the nervous system. It has a lot to do in it because we can't handle the emotions per se, again, if we don't have the experience, but the self-talk, if we have predominant, now I've worked years on my self-talk, years. And so I have built a very encouraging voice. She's not there 100% of the time because the critical voice, she's still there. I was talking about meaning making and the meaning making machine, the self-talk. So this morning I had training and the basement was hot. There was a bunch of things going on. My body is sore. Still going through perimenopause, even though it's not all hormones. I want to share this because I was upset in a different way with my body that it wasn't performing the way that I wanted it to. This is important in terms of the story because I was getting frustrated with myself that it was sticky and hot, the dehumidifier was off, certain household stuff was offline. I had to go do this, right? So the thing that we're talking about, frustration. And I was putting it back like, you've got to change your attitude, Kristen. Don't let this rule your day. This is like the little, I don't know if I'd call it a militant voice or like the little sergeant general in my head. And then it was like, come on, get with it. This shouldn't be that hard. Like I'd mentioned before we started, like I was doing these leg lifts and my heart rate was like at 150 and I'm judging going, why is my heart rate this high? It shouldn't be this high. This shouldn't, air quotes, be hard. Hello, friends. I have the same voice that y'all do. I'm not in any different so I'm noticing this and my trainer's, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm frustrated with myself. And you're doing it. Like you're here and you're doing it. And so he's trying to like encourage me and I'm not picking up what he's putting down. So I'm like, okay, we're at a rest period. I'm walking around. And so I hear this voice from my inner encourager or my higher self or whatever you want to call her. And she's, Kristen, today you're experiencing disappointment. Like I said, and I can hear it in my head. And she's like, this is disappointing. You don't want to be here. You want to be the rock star that you were on Tuesday, lifting the heavy weights. And it's hot and the humidifier wasn't on and you're disappointed that things aren't going, so frustration matching your definition, right? You're frustrated that things aren't happening the way that you want them to. Can you hold space for your disappointment while you're going through this workout? Because then I'm like, then my voice goes, and are you potentially trying not to disappoint him or what you can do today? Are you holding somebody else's potential disappointment that number one isn't yours, that you don't know if it's even true, but you're making stuff up in your head? And I was like, and then I was like, and you can hold disappointment. And then I mentioned my son may have been disappointed because I had to go and he was like, can you make me something? And I was like, no, I don't have time. So then I felt I was disappointing him. And I was like, you're teaching him to handle disappointment. You're teaching yourself to manage your own disappointment. And disappointment is not death. You're not going to die from being disappointed. You're not going to die from disappointing someone else because disappointment is a part of life. And we're all going to be disappointed. And can you hold space, again, for the sacred nature of disappointment as any emotion, because every emotion is sacred. Every emotion is a messenger. What is this teaching you? And I was like, it's teaching me that the capacity where I was in that moment, that I was getting close to capacity and that I had an expectation, very important word. I had an expectation that I could or should hold more. And the frustration was because you're like, oh my gosh, because my disappointment was because I could not hold the expectation of my capacity, and that could I hold space for the discomfort of the disappointment and just move through. And then by halfway, a little bit longer, 20 minutes later, he was like, you're doing better. It looks like you moved through it. And I never told him what came up in my head, but I'm like, man, thank you, voice, because it was just like, that's what I needed. She didn't make it better. She didn't tell me. That little inner voice wasn't like, push hard, you suck. That voice, if I strengthen that voice, yes, but my discomfort, can I hold space for my discomfort? Can we hold space for that? And we got to start with that 5 pounds. We can't start with 50. And I said, okay, I'm going to do what I can do. Was I disappointed that I did 8 reps instead of 10? Yes. And it's not the last time I'm going to work out. And it doesn't mean shit about me. It doesn't mean it, but if I make it mean something, which is where the meaning making machine, if I mean it makes something, then that's where I feel less than, instead of, hey, Kristen, can you hold space for where you are? It's not where you want to be. Can you hold space for yourself right here? And I was like, yes.
Boom. There you go. You're living proof that doing what you are suggesting works, but it takes practice.
It takes practice. And it also takes compassion, which again seems like for many people we work with, they're like, it's not just knowing what the word means, it's knowing how to practice it. And today I was, as much as I could be, compassionate while recognizing that the different parts of me were definitely conflicted. There was a part of me that was like, push through, you got this, sucks. And then there was another part that was like, can we just hold space for the suck? Can just move through the suck? Can we just realize our expectations aren't matching action? And that's sometimes what happens. And you're going to be disappointed. Can we just hold space? I know I'm repeating myself, but I want people to understand like how huge this is, because if we can hold space for our disappointment and not make it mean you're a failure, not make it mean that I'm a loser or I'm this or I'm that. If we can not make it mean something, if we can just say, this is where you are today, and hold space for where you are. And because the meaning that we create, when people start to create meaning, what I see is, and you see it and I see it, our peeps are like, oh, I suck. I can't seem to do anything. Like they go to the world is, and I'm like, come back. So I think this is powerful for everyone. Absolutely everyone, whether you work with us, whether you don't, doesn't matter. What I do think is that if you can take one thing back to discomfort equals growth. And can you hold space, even a little bit, just a little bit, for the discomfort that you're going through? And when I hold space is notice it, recognize it. Maybe that you do a drawing about it, that you talk about it, that you think about where, again, like you said, where is that discomfort in your body? Where is it showing up? Where, and whether you can name it or not, use words that aren't even feeling words, right? Use things like it's a ball of hairy,
whatever, or it's soft, it's gooey, it's stinky. You could definitely use all those words to explain those big emotions.
And when we're able to, again, start to recognize, oh, wow, I don't like this. My expectations aren't matching my reality. Can I be okay with that? Or even using third person speech. Can Kristen, in this case, can Kristen hold space for this? Can Kristen be okay with this just for this moment? Can she deal with it? Can she allow this discomfort to be while she's still going through her day? Can she allow it to be? When I say hold space for it, I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to move it. I don't have to carry it around, but it's just, I see you, discomfort. I see you. I witness you, and you may be inside my body, or you may be hanging out. Almost like I get this picture of the little kid in the bleachers. Can we go now? Are we done yet? And it's like, sometimes it's okay. I'm just going to let you hang out in the bleachers. You may yell at me from the sidelines, and I'm still going to do what I'm doing here. But can we sit with it? Can it just hang out with us? And sometimes it will yell back, and it's okay, but I got to finish this. And just how it shows up is how it shows up. Can we interact with it in a way that, again, isn't like, I have to do something with it? It's like that hot potato is, if the hot potato falls, it's not the end of the world. So the hot potato falls.
Pick it up.
Yeah. Or let it cool off and then pick it up. Like whatever.
That too.
Yeah. But I think I think this is living proof at 12 years out. Hey, friends, there are things that get easier. And then there are things that come along and they're like, this was easy. So there are different things. You're going to handle different things. But here's the thing, whether you had weight loss surgery or not, these things are going to come up, whether you're dealing with food issues or not, because this is life. This is life. And so it's gonna come up. There are things that are gonna come up that are gonna be disappointing and frustrating. And how are you doing it so that you're not self-harming and that you are self-validating and allowing yourself to experience it and for it to move through you? And I don't know, I hope that this story and this share really gets people to realize, number one, you guys are not alone. Like, we go through the heavy stuff too. And there are other ways out than using food or any transfer addiction, substance, shopping, sex, porn, alcohol, drugs, or anything else that people turn to. As that's not the answer. The answers are within you. And we've been talking about it. Like, the discomfort does equal growth, because what's between discomfort and growth is new learning. And I know we didn't talk about that and we're out of time, but that, I think, is the thing, is what we've shared today in our experience and what we've discovered is that new learning between the discomfort and the growth is what really helps us. And we're always learning. I'm never going to stop learning. You're never going to stop learning. We're always going to keep learning. And that's just a part of life. So I just encourage you guys listening to lean into discomfort, lean into learning, celebrate your growth, even when it's stinky, even when it's a fireball, even when it's, wow, I got through to the other side of that and I allowed it, and celebrate that, celebrate all of it, because nobody wants this. Nobody's like, hey, can I get a side of anxiety with a slab of discomfort, please? I love that. Nobody does that. None of us want that. And it's part of being in this human experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. This has been a great topic. And I hope that folks are getting as much out of it as I get out of it. So I appreciate being here and being able to fill in and be available to discuss some of this stuff with you all.
And thank you for sharing. And I always love our talk. All right, everybody, this concludes another episode. So if you are looking for more information, definitely check us out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook at Bariatric Mindset, or you can definitely find us on the website, www.bariatricmindsetsuccess.com, or you can always reach out if you're curious about topics, coaching, and other information at support@bariatricmindset.com. And that's our email address, support@bariatricmindset.com. So lots of love, everybody. And until the next episode, see you next time.